Hello viewers and welcome to the fourth and final instalment of Romo18's FIFA 19 Career Mode Wishlist. We've gone through a lot of different topics and I've had some fantastic suggestions from you, the viewers, as well, which I'm going to be looking at later on in this episode to round it all off. But first we have a couple more suggestions to go through before that in order to finish off the series. Now before that, let's just have a quick recap of what we discussed in part 3. Now we looked at the youth academy and one of the elements was how I believe it should be split into different age group squads. So you'd have the 16s, the 18s, the 21s, the 23s, etc. We also talked about how they would all be in competitive leagues, and so you would then get youth staff to give you reports on all of their individual performances each game, and also the performances of the team as well, to focus on the development and the progress of both sets of that. And also the minimum limit should have been 18 per squad. We discussed how the limit was a maximum of 16 in career mode at the moment, just players in general, whereas I believe it should have been expanded into 18 at least per squad, so you can have a much bigger, wider range of youth academy and prospects coming into the youth side. On top of that, we discussed youth levels and categories. Now there'll be more information on that if you go and check out part 3. Obviously, if you haven't watched any of them yet, work your way up. I would highly advise you do that anyway. But yeah, we discussed that obviously in part 3, and have a look at that because we go into much more detail about it then. And then after the youth academy, we looked at player interaction. And one of the things we talked about there was different options should be available when communicating with a player. So when he comes forward to you about his unhappiness, or you can just communicate with him in general, things like that really. But as I say, more detail in part 3, so if you haven't watched that, go and check it out. Now without further ado, let's get into the subject of today's episode. Now my main area of improvement in part 4 today is the financial side of it, and financial management in particular. Now what happened in FIFA 17 was EA did change this about a bit. Obviously they brought in the objectives, and with that different aspects of the financial side, but despite the addition, it was lacking any real depth, and as a result it sort of didn't really quite add up. And didn't really aid the experience much. Although it enhanced the experience slightly, it doesn't do much more once you get past the basis of it, and therefore it is actually quite basic. Now there is a prime example of this basic nature in action, and it's quite common as well, and that is one objective that you get set financially in career mode quite often is increasing season ticket sales. Now that, I don't mean to be rude, but that quite frankly is absolutely abysmal. The fact that it is in career mode, it's so strange. Outside of winning matches, as the manager, you can't affect that. So why is that in there? You know, that is down, in real life, that's down to the sales and marketing teams, you know, etc. Backroom teams like that. It's nothing to do with the manager, you know, so I'm not quite sure why that is set as one of your objectives. Now EA's response to this might be something along the lines of, well, you know, the success of the team does determine, you know, your season ticket sales, so actually it is in your power, and I firmly disagree. And examples of this would be someone like Bradford City. For those of you who don't know, Bradford City are in League 1. They've been there for a couple of years now, a few years after being promoted from League 2 after you know, a disappointing few years for them. They average around 20,000 fans per game, and that's in League 1. That's far above almost all attendances in League 1, you know, bar maybe a couple of teams like Portsmouth who are still below that figure anyway. And you know, despite the fact that they are in League 1, they're still selling that high, really impressive amount of tickets and season tickets. And one of the main reasons, apart from, you know, obviously the size of the club, is also the cheap season ticket prices. And now, you know, they've got a lot of good publicity for that, so it's not about the success of the team. You know, they're averaging way above a lot of teams in the Championship and even some teams in the Premier League as well. So again, it's not necessarily about the success, it's about, you know, things such as that, the publicity, the reasonable ticket prices, the fair ticket prices that are going to attract people to come to the games. there's another prime example of this, and that is the financial objectives that you should have. Say, for example, a minimum of 2.5 million in transfer funds left at the end of the transfer window. So what is the point in giving you the funds then? You know, why wouldn't you just take that 2.5 million back as the board? You know, what's the point in setting that objective? Don't allocate those funds if you don't want me to spend them, you know what I mean? Because then just keep the money and forget about these objectives. Again, that's a really pointless objective. They already take a certain portion out of the money you make when you sell a player anyway, so why is that then set further on after selling players and etc.? So my first suggestion based on this would be to just remove these pointless financial objectives, because they only serve to make it more unfair and unrealistic for you, the manager. And I've spoke to people about this with them when talking about career mode, and that was that they just ignore it anyway, because you know there's nothing they can really do, especially when it comes to, you know, increasing season ticket sales or, you know, certain brand exposure elements. So they just ignore it and they just get on with the main objectives, and that is, you know, cup objectives or, you know, league objectives, etc. So you might as well just remove them, in my opinion. Another addition to career mode which I'd personally like to see is that of an overall balance. Now what I mean by this is just seeing, you know, the overall financial figure that your club currently possesses, you know, and the reason behind this is that there are a lot of career modes I've had personally where I've not spent a lot of money. You know, in fact I might not have brought any players in really. I've used what's already there, but I've sold you know, maybe a couple of players and made a lot of money, and you don't see that balance then retained for next season to go into your transfer budget, and this prolongs itself the longer your career mode goes on. And I feel that with an overall balance you'll be able to see just how badly you are getting cheated, for one, and also then you've got a scope to be able to add certain amount of funds to your transfer budget, you know, without getting screwed over. And if it's the case where, say, your overall balance says you've got over 100 million and you're only getting a transfer budget of, you know, maybe 5 or 10 million, then you can start, you know, asking questions to the board and wondering why, demanding why, to know why you don't have more money to, you know, strengthen the side or do, you know, whatever it is you need to do. So yeah, I think this would be a welcome addition. I think it's much needed. I don't see what isn't in there. They've got the profit, they've got the loss as well, they've got all the features of turnover, but they don't have the overall balance. And I think they haven't added that for the reason of being able to sort of get their way out of giving you the transfer funds that you do rightfully deserve. That brings the financial management side of it to an end. There is one big feature that I'd like to see added, unrelated to that, which I've, you know, forgotten to mention in the past parts, and that is that the career mode only has a length of 15 seasons, and that needs to change immediately. I think there's no reason why that can't be unlimited, because FIFA already has the feature where, you know, there's regens for every player that retires, and obviously you've got all the youth academy players coming in as well, so I don't see why it doesn't go on for longer. We've seen other games such as Football Manager have an unlimited span. You can go through to, you know, the year 4000 if you so wish, and you know you've managed to do that, and so I don't see why FIFA doesn't have similar things. Why have we only got 15 seasons? It sort of gives, for me personally, it makes you less interested in career mode, because you realise it's got to come to an end at some point. You know, you've only got 15 seasons. You might have brought a player in from the youth academy, maybe he's a 16-year-old, he looks good. You won't even get to see him for his whole career, because it will end before his career does. So yeah, I think this definitely needs to be looked at and altered to become much longer, if not unlimited. So that brings my suggestions for the wish list to a close. Before we finish, I want to get into just some user feedback I got from you guys. You know, I had some fantastic suggestions over the course of, you know, the first 3 episodes, and now you know, I just want to relay some of the best ones back. So first off, we've got Jensen, you know, who supported this series on my channel really well so far. I really appreciate that. And the one thing he mentioned was having a chairman mode. which I thought was really interesting. You know, he said that it probably wouldn't fit into to the FIFA franchise, but actually in Madden, which is also obviously an EA Sports game, they do have an owner mode. But the only problem being with that is that you still have manager duties, so i.e. you still pick the team, you still, you know, play the games, etc. Whereas, you know, I think the best part of being a chairman mode would be to not have to do that. So yeah, if you're managing all the financial aspects, for example, and obviously hiring, firing managers, etc., and staff, and all the other elements, the stadium, etc. Yeah, I think that would be really enjoyable, and I think definitely EA should look into this. There's actually a mobile app, a game called Football Chairman, where you can do this sort of thing, and yeah, that's really enjoyable. So I don't see why EA shouldn't consider putting that into their game as well. Next up was Cyan, and I apologise in advance if I'm butchering your name. I'm probably going to have a tendency to do that for the rest of these as well, so I do apologise for that. But the suggestion there was that when your player retires in player career mode, how his appearance should then be your appearance as the manager when you go into the manager, because those who don't know, once your player retires, you then become a manager in career mode. And yeah, it was actually, you know, we looked into it, and yeah, we discovered that it will go back to a default avatar appearance rather than being your player's appearance, which is again slightly strange, but yeah, it'd be good to see that as well. That just adds to you know, to the whole mode and makes it more immersive for you, the player. Next up was Adamola, and he had, as you can see, a range of different suggestions, all that were really good. But I'm just going to pick out a couple that really stuck with me. The one was to be able to train players into new positions, and yeah, this is real basic stuff that, you know, really should be in the mode. And you know, quite disappointed I didn't actually think of this myself when doing this series. But yeah, it's a really good suggestion. You always worry when you change a player's position, when say you play a holding mid at left mid or left back, for example. You always worry that maybe it will hinder his progress. Maybe that's how FIFA works. But yeah, if they just introduce the you know, the ability to change a player's position, or add a player's position rather, then yeah, it should. I don't see why not that shouldn't be introduced. Amongst all the other great suggestions from Ademola, one that really stuck with me, that I think would really add something to it, would be squad and player registration. Now, some people might not know this, but actually there are registration rules in place in, well, all countries around the world, but in particular in Britain, they do have rules that say, I believe it's a minimum of 4 players that have to be trained by the club from possibly their 15th birthday to their 21st. So that means it's encouraging you to have a minimum of 4 youth academy players in, and then also to have 8 players trained in the country between those same periods of time, which again, one, it would, as Ademola said, would stop us from hoarding players because we can afford it, and having a squad of, you know, 35 to up to 40 players. But also it just makes it more of a challenge and more entertaining, because you've got greater focus on having to invest in your own talent and also homegrown talent. You know, you can't just, if you're in Spain for example, you can't just hoard a load of players in from Italy and Germany and England, etc. You've still got to have that focus on Spanish homegrown players. And yeah, I think that would be really interesting, and one that EA should definitely look into. We already see that sort of thing in Football Manager, and that's a great feature. You know, it really it tests you, and also makes it realistic. So yeah, it'd be good to see EA add those in. Next up was Sam, who's been another regular supporter in the comments channel, or should I say the comments on my channel, and yeah, once again really appreciate that, Sam. And he was saying about how a lot of these features were already in FIFA. The old manager mode, where it used to be before career mode back in, you know, FIFA 07, 08, etc. There was a lot of things like, you know, obviously the training, sponsors management, facility management, and squad training. They're already in, and they've just sort of been removed. Really strange, because these are all good features. Everyone likes that sort of thing, and you know, so we just want to see the return of those sort of things. Sponsors in particular, I remember back in the days of FIFA 07 when there used to be a big focus on sponsors, and you could choose, and you know, they give you different amounts of money. Maybe they give you a lower initial fee, but they'll give you higher win bonuses, etc. And that was really good. That was, and you know, I'd love to see the return to something like that. Another suggestion, this time from Willie BIH, and that was the ability to take over as a real life manager. So say for example, if you wanted to start with Manchester City, then you could just start as Pep Guardiola rather than having, you know, to go through all the storylines, you know, the minor storylines and the pitch, etc. of signing a new unknown manager, because you know it doesn't quite fit. You know, you sort of feel like it's as unrealistic as it is, you know. And so yeah, I think that's something they should definitely look into. I think a lot of people would do that sort of thing. I think given the choice, you know, people would be surprised about the amount of players that would actually decide to start as a manager who's already there, a current manager. So yeah, I'm not sure how the logistics work of that in terms of licensing, but I'd imagine if you can play as the players, obviously on FIFA, there's no reason why you can't play as the managers. I don't see why it would take any added effort or added cost sort of thing to EA's bill in order to start simulating the manager. And one final suggestion, this time from Darkware GT Grotopia, and that was free roam and house and car. Now, actually a year ago, if someone would have suggested this, you know, I would have said it's really highly unlikely. And you know, you can still think that now because of, you know, EA Sports' reluctance to change career mode. But I've actually seen clips of NBA 2K18's sort of player career mode in that, and how people do actually have the ability for customization, free roam, things like that. So it could be in the offing, maybe. Like it's obviously a potential to be. It's just whether or not EA are actually going to show any desire at all to add this sort of thing in. But yeah, that would be fantastic. That would be really, really the pinnacle of any career mode, really. On that note, guys, it is time to bring this episode and therefore this 4-part series to a close. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it through all the series so far, I really appreciate it. I really hope you've enjoyed it. A lot more to come on the channel, so please do look out for that. Like and subscribe if you've not already and you've enjoyed the content. A lot more to come, and leave a dislike if you did enjoy it and tell me what I can do to improve. I'm always open to constructive criticism, etc. So thank you so much for that, and on that note, I've been Bromo18, and I will see you soon.